Welcome to Mitchell Levy Presents, where I dive into the essential elements of clarity and credibility. Hosted by global credibility expert Mitchell Levy, today's episode offers invaluable insights to make you think and act more credibly. Join us as we explore living your values, boosting your credibility, and leading purposefully. Hi, Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert, and welcome to one of the most funnest times of my day. And I have a fun day. I'm here with an expert, Eddie Turner, and I'm looking forward to exploring Eddie's values. So here we are on Leaders Living Their Values, and I want to welcome to the stage Eddie Turner.
Hi, Mitchell. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, it's always great to have conversations with you. So just for the audience to know, who is Eddie Turner?
I'm Eddie Turner, and I work with experienced and emerging leaders who want to make an impact at the places, organizations where they are associated, and to really drive sustainable growth and profitability.
All right, so let's talk about the other aspects as well. Who's the bigger Eddie Turner?
The bigger Eddie Turner? Tell me what aspect you mean, and we can talk about
Tell me
that.
about things that you do outside of just purely the work side. The kids, the marriage, all of that stuff.
I guess the bigger picture would be obviously just proud to be a husband, be a father, two gifts that I don't take for granted, because not everybody is blessed to be able to find love, and then not everyone is blessed to be able to have children. I never thought I'd have children. I'm an old dad, and so that really my family time is something I guard, and something that's very precious to me.
What's that mean? So how do you spend time as a dad? How do you add, like it one of the benefits of being an older parent, and you're not old, by the way, but one of the benefits of being an older versus a super young parent is that you've already seen some aspect of life, and now you're focusing on your kids and knowing how important that is. What does that mean to you, and how have you two decided to parent differently?
Well, I call myself an old dad because I now realize that most people do this when they're 20 or even 30, and I'm way beyond that. And I think that what I am keenly aware of now is how much I did not know. There are aspects of parenting that you know academically, right? We all were kids at one point. We've seen it on TV and in the people's lives around us. But there are just simple pleasures of life you just can't possibly know or understand until you are in the seat of being a parent. Precious moments, simple things, like that Saturday afternoon nap when you got the little one nestled right in that little spot and the head's right there, right? There's just a pleasure you don't know about, right? The little things as they start to be able to speak and express themselves, and you start to see how each personality comes to life. Then, of course, there are the unique challenges that come with parenting and decisions you're making in terms of how you're educating them, how you want them to develop into the people you want them to be. Those are, it's a sacred responsibility, I believe, but it's immensely rewarding and gratifying, and it's just a layer of life I did not know that existed, and how rich my life has become, and that I didn't have children, and I loved my life. Thought everything was perfect, but didn't realize just how much more meaningful it is to have two very special people to share that with.
Yeah, I remember somebody saying this to me, and I've said it to others. There's no parenting book. You could read all of them, and you could watch all the podcasts, but what happens is your kids are yours, and there's no book, and you have to actually just figure it out as you go along, and life is different on day 0.1 second into your kids' lives.
Yes, and there are lots of great books out there, and we certainly received some as gifts, and we're grateful to the folks that shared those with us, and we did our own research. And then there's always those moments where you go, "Hey, this wasn't in the book anywhere. What do you do here?" Or as things are changing so fast, right? Decisions about programming, for example. Uh, my wife and I started off as very strict, no screens kind of parents, and then you start to think, okay, well, should it be some screen time? What if there is going to be screen time, what should it be? How much? What type of programming? And you start to do all this research and understand exactly what's taking place. And even the top programs that are designed for children and what they do and what's happening to their minds as they're developing neurologically. And you're trying to balance that with being a good parent and then the diet, all these things that factor into really trying to be a good parent and, the spiritual aspect, all these different components. And then education, where does that begin? Who should be doing it? How much? And then when you're ready to send them to a formal place, what should that look like? Lots goes into making these decisions. And again, certain things that I just never even had on my horizon that are now right in front of me, and something that we're actively doing on a daily basis.
So what's the when, not if, so when you do like the best job you can, because that's all we can do as parents, what's your hope? What would you like to see your kids grow up into? Not jobs or anything, but who are they? What are you looking to accomplish?
Well, I think every parent always says, I want my children to be better off than I was. And even that is a constant defining and redefining, right? Because even when you didn't come from a place of privilege, does that mean you want your children to have a lot of privilege? Or does that mean you still want them to understand what it means to struggle and to be without? Does that mean that you want them to understand that there are some people that suffer tremendous disadvantage in the world and others who have advantages? So it's a balancing act of trying to make things better, but then also helping them to be well-rounded human beings that have a sense of values, that have an awareness of other people, empathy, appreciation. To me, you're trying to build a whole person and instill that into those values. And so that definitely factors in to trying to create what you want that to look like in these people that will be reflective of you. And then also then it does include what type of work should they do, right? I grew up with one vision of what my career would look like. And now that's something I think about daily, how I want theirs to be very different. And for some people, that means, hey, is it going to be gearing them toward this career path or that career path? Or should we just let them figure it out? And I believe that we have to give them, build competency in them. And then with that competency and structure, allow there to be a latitude for some self-discovery, but also realizing that much like you plant a tree and when you're planting that new tree, you gotta strap it down so that it still grows straight, right? They need that anchoring so that they can go into a certain direction. And some of the most successful people we've seen have had those parents who've picked out what that should look like for their children, allowed them to experiment, but guided them along so that they have some certainty, some targets, so that they're not vacillating from one item to the other, and can be a bit more targeted and therefore more successful in what they're going to be. And in the age of AI, where so many things are changing, so many roles, so many career paths are disappearing, I think it's even more important to have that structure, because some of the jobs, even that were considered great just 2 years ago, in the medical field, to be a surgeon, to be a doctor, right? Even those will look very differently in the next 20 years. So there's a lot of intentionality that needs to be put behind even what the career goals should be for young people, and not waiting until they're older.
So this is interesting. I loved hearing you talk this way, because you've been doing what you do for work for decades, and fine tuning it over time. How much change happened once you started raising kids?
How much change happened to what?
How you approached your day-to-day, your actual job, as in terms of helping helping emerging leaders really prepare and be focused on the future, living the best life they can. How much has having children changed how you approach that role and what you're teaching and what they're learning?
When I came up with the concept of emerging leaders and expanding it beyond the definition that most people see it as, the high potentials in an organization and one sector of people in their a particular part of their career, and defined it in 2017, 2018 when I did the book with you. The idea was that there's, to me, more to being an emerging leader than just this category. And one of the categories I identified through my research and experience was young people. And I defined young people even as those who are beyond school, high school years. Did not know that a few years later I'd end up having children. And so now I would say that my work went from literally being more of an academic exercise to, hey, here's where the rubber meets the road. I'm applying that to my own children. So the most important emerging leaders that I am investing in are those two people. And it started with something as very simple as one of the things I always believed in, even with before I had children, just being an educator, is that learning begins in the womb. So from the moment I knew that my children were conceived, I began educating them in the womb. And then that has carried outside the womb. So very specific learning lessons that my wife and I apply to the children. And it's interesting to see what that looks like and how they show up as people at school and some of the comments that we will receive from the educators. And we smile, and we smile proudly because the hard work is paying off. It's not by accident that they are showing up the way they're showing up. It's all the hours that get poured into them that are now reflected in their behavior and reflected in how my daughter will, for example, lead the rest of the class, or even what things that my son does to be a little bit more precocious and to be ahead of schedule. Very heartwarming for us, and obviously, to me, it's an investment that is necessary, but also it's a proof of concept for me.
Nice. So I guess my question is, in terms of your advisory services, your speaking when you're publicly out there, your coaching, consulting, what one lesson did your kids teach you that you now pour back into your work?
Empathy.
Mm.
I thought that I was empathetic, but now I realize that in many ways, for years, I might have been more judgmental than I would have ever acknowledged. I didn't understand sometimes why a new parent was late or maybe not themselves on certain days. And and all it takes is a couple of sleepless nights. You realize, first of all, something that I would never have known, that literally that person hasn't slept for months before the baby's born even, right? And then you go through that whole period where you brought them home from the hospital and you're not sleeping and you're going through all these changes as an individual, as a couple, right? And that all changes how you might show up and how you're performing, and just a lot of psychological as well as physical changes that a person goes through. So I did not know that before. I experienced it now, and I realized I might have been more judgmental on others than I should have been. So it's made me more empathetic at this stage in my life.
Well, from when I remember of all of our interactions, you always have a kind heart. You always have the intent and commitment to do the right thing. And I don't think that's changed at all in terms of who you are and how I see you. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm not even going to say softer isn't the right word. Empathetic, yeah, maybe that's the right word. There's probably others, but you're always been one of those guys who are high on integrity. Say what you do what you say type of guy. And that's always been very consistent with you. How do you teach that to, let's move from the kids to the when you're actually in front of a group and you're educating a group or advising a group, how do you teach that in the way that it really sinks in?
Well, there are a number of ways that I get across the concept of how important empathy is with a group, be it through a keynote speech where that is inevitably something that I touch on as a part of developing oneself as a leader, or it could be in a coaching session, one-on-one or in team coaching. The ideal is that for today's leaders to be successful, especially in the age of AI, artificial intelligence, and so much that is taking place for us digitally, what separates us is not the intelligence component or IQ, which gets you through school. It's EQ, emotional intelligence, which gets you through life. And an element of emotional intelligence is, of course, the ideal of understanding, having self-awareness of who we are and how we come across, but then also understanding how others can impact us and actually control us if we're not careful. But then there's that whole aspect of empathy. And so in explaining emotional intelligence and its importance as a leader and how it separates truly the most memorable leaders from those in a positive way from those who are not so memorable or not so beloved is one aspect of that. And stressing that it is about not just this ideal of being necessarily liked, but being effective. And what some people call soft was deemed at one point a bad word. Even use the word empathy in a corporate setting, right?
Mhm.
It's like even why they don't use the word love. Almost it was a bad word to use the word, right? But no, people understand that no, you need to understand the feelings of other people. And one of the best definitions I ever heard for empathy was your pain in my heart. I feel it that close that I feel it inside of me. And when I feel it that way, I'm moved to do something about it. It's not just me saying, oh, I'm sorry, too bad, too sad. What can I do to take away your pain? So it's a deeper expression of what this word means. And it's something that requires action. And when we show up that way as a leader, we have a powerful impact on the people we're leading. And when we are able to have that impact, we change the direction of our organization.
I love that. Do you have an example? Obviously, no names. Do you have an example of a leader who just was touched by your talk of empathy and did something different afterwards?
There are innumerable examples of people that I have
Say
coached.
that 5 times fast.
A little tongue tied there. Innumerable examples of leaders I've coached as the executive coach who, especially depending on who your model is. You know, I came up in corporate America in the days of Jack Welch in GE. You know, I spent almost 10 years at GE. And at one point, I mean, in history, to be a GE leader was a badge of honor. I mean, corporations would steal you away because you spent time at GE,
I
and especially
remember
if you had
I
that
remember those
executive
days.
training.
Yeah, exactly.
So people copied Jack Welch, and Jack was known as Neutron Jack. He had a take no prisoners attitude. He would just undress his top leaders, saying anything about them and just talking about them so in such a way, you know, that would just strip dignity. And so that was the way people led at one point. You can't lead that way anymore. So oftentimes as an executive coach, I've been called in these scenarios where leaders are still leading with that mentality and needing to understand, especially in this new era where you've got 5 generations of employees, according to the Harvard Business Review, working in the workforce at the same time, the expectations have changed. The tolerance level has changed. You can't just go in and undressing people like that. You can't strip people of their dignity. So it requires learning this new skill set and accepting it. Oftentimes, leaders are resistant to that because of where they've come from, because of what they've seen work in the past. And one of the nice tools I use is from Multi Health Systems, founded by Dr. Stephen Stein. And it is the premier tool that measures emotional intelligence. So MHS offers the Emotional Intelligence 2.0 Leadership Assessment. And when I issue that to a leader and they are able to see how they score, and especially when it's not just their self assessment, but when they allow me to issue the 360 to the people around them and get all of their feedback, for the first time, they come face to face with who they really are with versus who they think they are, because that is the true revealer. And when they see that, that has been most instrumental in these cases of getting a leader to make the change once they've seen that data. Now, when they see that data, they see how they're coming across, how people really feel about them. They're ready to now go into a coaching relationship for 6 to 18 months to make the necessary changes. And it's great to see on the other side how other people are now reporting about the leader when they've applied themselves. But then also when the leader is then able to send me that note or to tell me at the check-in session, this is what happened. This is what I did differently. What I would have normally done was X, and here's what I did, Y.
Can you share one without giving it away, or is that kind of too personal?
We'll leave it there.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, it's interesting. I just ended up. I just ended up introducing a new keynote, so I'd love to get your feedback on this. And I brought out one of these quotes that I've used for a long time, but I want to share, and that is: the success of a leader is felt in the success of their stakeholders. So the legacy of a leader is felt in the success of their stakeholders. Um, how does that resonate? What do you think about when you see that? So the success of a leader is felt in the success of the stakeholders, because clearly AI is not going to feel anything.
Well, there are the different levels of AI. There are the levels where you have an incredible ability to scrape data from, a plethora of sources. And as you do that, receive very accurate information. And in some cases, on some platforms, you have this very scripted, very accurate results of actionable information you can use. But then you have others that are more anthropomorphic, if you will, where there's this true human element to it, where it's not just giving you data, it really is coaching you as another person. It is really more human. It's not just hard data being thrown at you. And I think that that's really where you're starting to see a tremendous differentiator. So much so, I think I saw that Stanford, even in their medical team, is using this, and they're trusting that almost more than their own physicians, if you will, right? Because it's gotten to be that accurate. And so this idea that we once had that, hey, even as coaches, AI is not going to replace us because, hey, we're humans and you got to have that human element. That's not just that's not the case. It is really getting quite accurate, and it's bringing in this human element that we didn't think could be there. Marshall Goldsmith started the Marshall Goldsmith.ai project, and his is really well done. And even he would joke with us and say, it can do everything I do, but only better, except it doesn't have my jokes. That's what he would say to us, right? But I think it's not too far away from also starting to tell some of Marshall's jokes pretty soon. So it's just been a tremendous advancement. And what's so scary about what we're seeing is it's been a tremendous advancement in a very short period of time. You and I came of an age when all of this was, the digital transformation was occurring. We've seen the evolution. We've been a part of it. And that was my first career, technology. So I studied this and held many certifications. And I came up under Moore's law. Everything doubled every 6 months. Well, with AI, it's doubling much faster than that. And there was a gradual set of changes. And it's far different. The rapidity is scary. So it's a new set of laws that are being established now that did not exist before.
So, from an emerging leader perspective, and we now know the emerging leader is a very much broader definition, what should they be thinking about in terms of interacting, engaging with, and incorporating AI into their daily practice?
Number one, what you just said, it should be a daily practice. Anybody who is trying to figure out what they should do today should be looking at AI every day. Something that you are doing today needs to be replaced by AI. So mastering AI, gaining competency, studying all of its use cases, and then implementing that into your day-to-day work, no matter what your career is. That's what everyone should be doing as you emerge as a leader. And that means not just that one subset. I go through 10 in the book. And the ideal is we all should be emerging as a leader. And emerging as a leader today means you have AI competency. It's not something you're leaving to the IT department, you're leaving to other people. You are figuring out how, when you're typing that next email, how when you are even doing that next report, how you are using the AI features available to be more accurate, more expeditious in your tasks.
Yeah, it was a loaded question. I did say the word daily. Yes, I appreciate that. Hey, listen, guys, let's hang around. I got two more questions. But first is, if you were intrigued by Eddie Turner, and I am always intrigued by Eddie Turner, and you want to learn more, Eddie, how best should people be reaching out to you?
AskEddieTurner.com. Ask EddieTurner.com.
You know, we didn't even talk about that ahead of time, and there is no better way than to give your website, direct people there, spell it out. So once again, thank you for demonstrating the value of who you are and how you show up. So that's awesome. So Eddie, based on this conversation, is there a question that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I guess since this is the Leaders Living Their Values podcast, I told you about some things that matter to me, but I would basically say that there's a couple of times you said some things that are my values. So let me just give you three. The three I would say is what we talked about: integrity. Number one, integrity matters to me. I have a very strong, I realize this, especially as I've gotten older, I have a very strong sense of justice. And part of that is this idea with integrity being sound. Obviously, it's what we do, not only just when no one is looking, but it's also what we do when we are under fire, when we're under pressure. And we see it around us more and more now, where people are being put in situations where they're having to walk away from their long-held positions. If we're walking away from our long-held positions, they're not values. We can't walk away from our values. So that value of integrity matters. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And obviously, how is that reflected? Am I showing up that way every day? Is what I challenge myself to do. The second component will be what we talked about, this whole idea of empathy, that there must be a level of empathy in everything that I do and how I'm interacting with others. And finally, combined with that, the growth mindset, everything that you and I were talking about with AI, keeping abreast of changes. I've long held this idea of not being comfortable. Don't get complacent. Don't get comfortable. I challenge myself to do something new, to learn something new every year. And that's just been who I've always been. Even more so does it matter now. So integrity, empathy, and a growth mindset are three core values that I use to live as a leader.
Well, thank you. That was a perfect question and response. Listen, if first I want to say, Eddie, thank you. Thanks for giving me your time and allowing me and others to see you a little bit more closely. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Mitchell. If someone's looking for an executive coach or a keynote speaker for their organization, visit AskEddieTurner.com.
Perfect. And for those who are still here, this is now your time. This is your time to spread cred dust. The time to take an idea, a thought, an action that was inspired from this conversation and to share it on social media in a way that other people will be inspired as well. Anyhow, thanks for joining us for Leaders Living Their Values. Eddie, thanks again for joining me. And it's always good to see you, my friend.
Likewise,
Take care, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Take care, everyone. Have a great, we'll see you at the next episode of Leaders Living Their Values. Bye now. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you found value in today's episode. Like, subscribe, and share your aha moments on your preferred platform. Remember, credibility starts with clarity